my channel. Oh my gosh, it's been a while since I've sat down and done a review. Mostly I'm just doing like game show episodes and podcasts at the moment. As many of you would know, I'd been having some issues in the kidney region, but I am kidney stone free. There's a bug in my room. I am kidney stone free. I am stent free. Everything is fine. It took 2 months for me to get all that done. COVID did not help that bitch. But I am fully recovered, and I've just slowly been trying to gain back my mental capacity to watch movies and do reviews, and so I had to start by catching up on screeners that I was behind. And so that brings us to today's review, which you know that a few weeks ago, I reviewed a film called Real from 2015, which was sent to me by the creator to review, and it exceeded expectations, and I loved this film. So when the creator, gave me the sequel to watch, obviously, I jumped at the opportunity. Well, I didn't jump because hospital issues. So I finally sat down like, yay, let's watch it. 2 weeks later, and I did keep, so it's like I would start to watch it, watch 5 minutes of it, and get either so bored or frustrated, I had to press pause and step away. And then I would try and watch another 5 minutes, and then the same thing would happen, and then another 5 minutes, until eventually I'm like, I'm at capacity for today, I can't do this. So I would step away and then come back a day or two later. So it's been like that for like 2 weeks, but I finally finished watching it, and I am now here to tell you my thoughts in as delicate a manner as I possibly can. Please, /victim666, please don't hate me for this. Real 2 is a 2020 found footage horror film written and directed by Chris Goodwin. It's a sequel to 2015's Real, and sees director /victim666 return after being convinced his first movie, Real, wasn't a blockbuster success because it starred a man. He makes it his personal mission to find the perfect woman to star in Real 2. Like I said, I tried for 2 weeks to watch this film, and let me tell you, the struggle is real. No pun intended. But there was no way I could in good conscience sit down and review this film if I turned it off. And believe me, I wanted to. Well, technically I did turn it off several times. But no person, especially no professional, should ever review a film they walked out of or stopped watching. Films can surprise you. There can be twists and turns, and sometimes the tone itself can change. I think many of us have watched a film and can say that we enjoyed one act or one half of the film more than another, but you don't know that fact unless you watch the whole thing. If it's a film you were personally sent, that's a privilege, and regardless of how you feel, you can at least have the decency to watch the whole thing, even if you didn't like it, which is what ended up happening in this case for me, and that kills me. I went into the first film very apprehensive, knowing I have a disdain for the found footage genre, and so I was expecting all the things I hate. But I walked away completely floored and blown away and loving the hell out of it. So because of that, I went into the sequel with really high standards that were not met. Real 2 embodies everything I loathe about the found footage genre, and I am beyond gutted by that fact. Everything I expected in the first film and was happy did not happen, all happened in the sequel. I've said numerous times that horror sequels are almost always a step down from the original, and this is no exception. This is sadly a lot more than just a step down. It's like Real was the attic and Real 2 is the basement of a 5-story building. I know this may sound harsh, but you have no idea how much life and excitement the first film gave me. It's like given a shot of an incredible new drug and then someone replaces it with a cheap over-the-counter substitute. It's coming down from this insane high and crash landing. I first want to address the main subject of the film, which has me feeling conflicted. Slasher Victim 666 is looking for a female to star in his next film, believing that's the key he needs, and yet it's funny how this core element fundamentally changes every facet of the film for the worst. So I ask myself, is this intentional or not? The answer to this question is vital to my opinion of the film because I can go either way on this. The first film was the most meta found footage I'd ever seen. There was careful planning and thought put into its execution and commentary. I don't feel like that's the case for this film, but I wonder if that's the point. Females in horror are most often written as the protagonist. Final girls are called final girls for a reason, but outside the final girl, every other female character is a poorly written, over-sexualized character who is solely there for the purpose of being brutally butchered, and usually while her tits are bouncing all over the place, and it's only gotten worse over the years, to the point it is a really infuriating horror trope, and at times an offensive gender stereotype. We really need more female villains. But, so knowing this fact, if the film was intentionally depicting women as unimportant characters only there for basic gratification but have nothing else to offer to the point it lowers the film's overall quality, then that's an amazing thing to include and is an incredible commentary on how women are depicted and used in not just cinema, but horror films specifically. But on the flip side, if it wasn't intentional, which I feel may be the case, then what we have is yet another case of a horror film heavily relying on annoying horror tropes and offensive gender stereotypes. In the first film, I described the way it's done is like a love letter to the lead Todd Smith. It's always like the events and the camera are watching him and wrapped around him like a caress. In this film, we just see compiled footage of woman after woman being brutally killed. They have no names, no stories. They're just meat sacks with nothing to offer. Then we meet Jane. Now, Jane does have a story, but is she the star? No, I don't feel she is. I feel in this case, Slasher Victim 666 is the star of the whole film because it's really all about him. Jane is there and present, but she's there assisting him to help him not to be the focus. The focus was always on him. It's his story. He tells us more about his life, he feels a kinship with Jane, he cares about her, and he experiences things with her he's not familiar with, but that further shows the film is about him, not her. When she is not around, he's still butchering women left and right. We get a lot of context to Jane, but most of what we get is not necessary, and it leads to there being too much and too many characters in the film that it just becomes a mess. We end up seeing an entire series of events featuring her sister Lena, Lena's boyfriend Ethan, and her roommate Peyton, who she's also having an affair with, and that was extremely obvious. Lena is recording herself, Lena is recording her sister. None of this was necessary, and we're never told how her footage made its way into Slasher Victim's film. We're just supposed to accept he found it. How did the cameras end up in her boyfriend's place? There's a scene with Lena and Peyton, and 1 minute they're talking and taking turns holding the camera. Then they're both in the shot and a third unknown party is holding the camera and it's moving, but we're still meant to accept this is not a filmed scene. There are so many found footage films that do this that can't rationally tell you why a person is recording themselves 24/7, why they have a camera on during intimate talks, but it's there because the scene is wanted for the film, and sometimes it's obtained through means that don't count as found footage. Now, there were moments involving hidden cameras in the first film that I chose to dismiss, but we end up with a lot of them in the sequel to the point I can't dismiss them. How did they get there and why? Jane herself is a terribly written and all over the place character. She meets Slasher while he's masked up, wielding a knife and pointing a camera at her in a room that looks like a crime scene from a drug user's den, and not once does she find that weird. Slasher interacts with everyone in this film while waving a knife around, pointing a camera in their face and hiding his identity. I know Canadians are peaceful and don't cause a fuss, but I think even Canadians would go, what the fuck, eh? She witnesses Slasher kill someone, and instead of trying to stop him or go to the cops, she just starts wearing black makeup wearing a black wig and snorting coke. When people descend into goth mode due to trauma, it's usually a slow progression. She basically then becomes Slasher's biggest fan and idolizes him for reasons that are never explained. She wants to be like him and be with him, and none of that sounds like a story about trying to find a female lead. So while she is there, she's not prominent. As I said, the focus really is Slasher. Slasher dives into more about his family, even writing a script and having actors perform the story of his life so Jane can understand him better. The film tells us that Slasher kinda hates his family. He resents them, he fears them because they have abused, mistreated, and degraded him his whole life. He flat out says in a voiceover that Jane was the first person to ever be kind to him. But then we meet his cousin Dominic and nothing adds up. Dominic is well dressed, he doesn't live out in the bush, he acts very normal, he can engage in normal social settings, and when Slasher asks for his assist, he says yes and is very helpful and not once is a dick. So that goes against how Slasher depicts his family as Canadian rednecks who murder and eat people and practice incest. But then, just like the first film, Slasher calls on his redneck relatives to help him torture and kill people for the end of his film. And again, I'm confused just as I was in the first film. If he wants to be famous on his own merit and wants to prove he is the best, why does he keep calling on relatives he hates to do his job for him? It continues to make no sense. This film ups the gore to level 100 and I didn't feel it was necessary. There was gore in the first film but reserved for the end, so it has a greater effect and placement, but in the sequel it is gore from start to finish with very little rest in between moments and most of it has no purpose. I have nothing against gore. What I hate is gore without a purpose, and that's what this film had. The one scene I loved was actually the face removal scene. This was once again a brilliant depiction of practical effects mixed with well-timed cutaways and intricately placed camera angles to sell the illusion of a real-life butchery. It was hands down my favorite scene of the entire film. It was the best use of effects and I loved it. But what led up to the scene had me so infuriated and goes back to the are we intentionally writing women being dumb for the sake of commentary on cinema, or the opposite? The victim in the scene opens the door to Slasher hiding his face, wearing a GoPro on his head, a camera in his hand, and a knife in the other. She doesn't just shut the door, she actually leaves it open and walks backwards, letting him in. She doesn't fight him off, she doesn't scream for help. Then, when he stops attacking her, she gets up and runs to the kitchen for a knife, very slowly I might add, instead of running out the front door. Now, she has one of those homes where the living room, kitchen, and dining room are all in one big room, so it would have been faster for her to reach the door than to walk to the kitchen and look through a drawer. She also manages to deter Slasher by opening the freezer door on his face. She was very gentle, yet this knocked him on his ass. Again, later when she comes out from hiding in the bathroom, she runs diagonally to the dining room instead of running straight ahead for the door. This is the kind of stuff Sidney Prescott was bitching about in Scream.
No, it's just, what's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
Stuff like this happens a lot in this film, and it frustrated me to no end. So many unnecessary scenes, so many chaotic moments that it all just feels like the ramblings of a madman. Even the third act of the film again doesn't focus on women at all. It's focused on Lena's partners who are trying to find out what happened to her. This is also how we even find out she's missing or dead. She's dead, by the way. We follow Ethan and Peyton around, and despite them not being central to the story, there just appears to be more care put into their characters and their screen time than is ever done with any of the women, and I'm dying to know if this was the actual point. The end of the film descends into utter chaos with torture and implications of sexual assault, and it gets crazy. It feels like we have gone so far off the rails of what the point of the film was meant to be that we don't understand how we even got here or why. The torture scenes were disturbing, but most of it not believable, and victims are just popping up out of nowhere. We don't know who they are or where they came from, and we don't even know whose house this is. Then it ends with a very strange psychosexual self-mutilation moment that I'm not fully able to comprehend. All of this, of course, is happening while Slasher never speaks. He only speaks in voiceovers where his voice has been altered to hide his identity, and this alteration sounds a little different to the last film. It sounds slowed down a lot more, which on one hand is very grating on the ears, but on the other hand makes Slasher sound very sad, and that aspect I like, but I got sick of it fast. Sometimes he speaks in a scene, but that has been altered, but most of the time he chooses not to speak and will only act things out, have text on the screen, or he actually writes down what he wants to say. Again, I don't know how anyone doesn't have giant alarm bells ringing around this guy. I have them, and I'm just watching this thing. The last thing I wanted was to be hypercritical about a film that was sent to me, but I genuinely had such high hopes. I never have any hopes for any horror sequels, but that first film impressed me so much, all my normal processes went out the window, and I wish they hadn't. The film opened with the instructions to turn the lights off like with the first film, and instantly I was excited, but it was all downhill after that, and I really wish it wasn't. Like I keep saying, if most of what was written in terms of characters and storyline was intentional, then I'm impressed, and it makes a valid point that when you dismiss a character because of their gender or feel they are not worth care or effort, it destroys the film. If it wasn't, then this is very unfortunate that something with such promise got turned and twisted in on itself into something unrecognizable. It was over the top and incoherent and was barely even a shadow of the original. Thank God I live in Australia and we're in the middle of a pandemic. Slasher can't come and kill me for my review. I feel horrible for not liking this film. I feel bad for ever saying anything about someone's hard work when they've entrusted it to me. But I can't lie. I can't pretend to love something I don't, and I can't pretend everything is well done when I don't feel it is. Slasher, I am still a fan of yours. I still recommend the first film to anyone and everyone, and I hope you don't hold this review against me. Because, like I said, there are elements in there that I think work really, really well. I think the storyline itself between Slasher and Jane, I think is brilliant, because I think it allows us to know more about Slasher. I think had that been the intentional focus and plot of the film, it would have been really fascinating to use her as that gateway to get to know him. I love that there is kind of something there to work with, but how it all goes about, and then the inclusion of Jane's family, it was all just wrong. And those are my thoughts on Reel 2. I'm filled with guilt and shame. I can watch other films that I either, obtained myself, or I went to the movies and I paid for myself, which is I haven't been to the movies since like February. Oh God. Do I actually miss the movies? A little bit. But I don't feel bad when I trash those films or say, trash, or say anything negative about those films, because there was no obligation for me to watch them or review them. But this is different. This is someone who has put a lot of time and effort and energy into something and entrusted it to you, and even though I'm not doing anybody any favors if I lie, I don't feel really good when I don't have anything that optimistic to say, and I feel bad for that. But nevertheless, that is it for today's review. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like having me back. I would also like to say thank you everybody who got me to 2,000 subscribers. That is freaking awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. So please, thank you for supporting my channel. Thank you for supporting my videos. I hope you'll support this one by giving it a thumbs up, maybe. And if you have gone and checked out Reel, or you have by chance seen Reel 2, please comment below, share your thoughts. Yeah, all that good stuff. I hope everybody is doing well at the moment. Please remember to take care of yourself, and thank you as always to my amazing, beyond terrific patrons. Thank you guys for still being patient with me while I was a patient myself. So thank you guys, and I will catch you in the next video. So until then, bye!